The sun was barely up when I parked my truck outside the Lake Ranch office. The morning mist still hovered over the water, and a crisp silence blanketed the shoreline. To anyone else, the cabin-like building I walked into might look like any other rural community office, but to me, it was the heart of the ranch I had poured blood, sweat, and decades into building. I unlocked the door with my personal key because, of course, I owned the entire property, including the land the HOA claimed as common space. They just didn't know it yet. Or maybe they did, and they were too proud or stubborn to admit the legal papers I held outweighed their flimsy bylaws. I stepped inside, flipped on the lights, and headed straight to the back room where all the documents were kept. The real ones. Not the Dr. Deeds HOA Karen had been handing out to her cronies. Just as I was settling in to review the damage she had done to the filing system, the front door burst open with the familiar screech of worn hinges and indignation. "What do you think you're doing here?" came the shrill voice I'd come to dread. Karen, HOA president, self-appointed queen of rules, and a nightmare wrapped in pearls and pastel cardigans. "I'm working," said calmly. Without looking up, she marched in like she owned the place, which ironically she didn't. Not an inch of it. "This is HOA property. You don't belong here. Leave before I call the sheriff." I finally looked up, letting a smirk tug at the edge of my mouth. "Karen, I am the sheriff's boss in this building. I bought it last year. Check the deed." Her face twisted in confusion before snapping back to fury. "Lies. That deed is null. I'm calling 911. I shrugged. "Be my guest." She whipped out her phone and jabbed the numbers like she was summoning a demon. I didn't flinch. If anything, I leaned back in the office chair and crossed my arms, waiting for the show to begin. 10 minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled in. Deputy Ramirez stepped out first, eyes scanning the scene. When he saw me sitting calmly inside, he muttered something into his radio and shook his head. Karen ran to him like she'd spotted salvation. "That man broke into the HOA office. Arrest him." "He's trespassing." Ramirez glanced at me then, at the deed folder on the desk in front of me, then back at Karen. "I'm going to need to make a call," he said. She looked outraged. "What for?" "I'm the HOA president." He ignored her and called in the chief. Within 5 minutes, the county 911 chief arrived in person. Karen's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Chief Darrow, thank God. Arrest him immediately. He's defying the HOA." The chief looked past. Her met my eyes and grinned. "Boss," he nodded respectfully. "You want me to remove her?" Karen blinked like she'd just been shot. I stood up slowly. "Yes. And file a report while you're at it." Karen's voice broke into a screech. "What do you mean, boss?" The chief held up a hand. "Ma'am, this man is head of the Emergency Response Advisory Board for the county. He outranks me in decisions involving this jurisdiction. And if he says you're trespassing on his property..." Turn to me. "She is," I confirmed. Karen's face crumbled, but this wasn't over, not even close, because Karen had forged signatures on dozens of HOA deeds. She had given out dock access to her family, rented out lakefront cabins she didn't own. And I had just opened the floodgate. Karen stood frozen, her phone still clutched in her manicured hand as if it were a weapon. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The chief, Ramirez, and I waited in silence, the tension as thick as the early lake fog outside. Then she exploded. "You can't do this. I've been president of this HOA for 12 years. I've chaired every meeting. I've written the bylaws." I stepped forward, calmly handing her a manila envelope. "Then maybe you'll enjoy reading this. It's a formal cease and desist, notarized, signed by the county registrar, and backed by 3 legal precedents. You'll also find copies of the new property deed, boundary surveys, and federal shoreline access maps, all of which confirm that this land, including this office, is mine." Karen snatched the envelope and tore it open with trembling fingers. Her eyes darted from page to page, growing wilder with each line she read. No, this is a trick," she hissed. "This has to be fake." Chief Darrow looked at me and said dryly, "We had it verified through the State Records Bureau last month. It's legit." Sorry, ma'am. You've been operating illegally. Illegally, she snapped. This is a private community. I cut in. It was until the federal reclassification of this region's shoreline 3 years ago, which you clearly never read about. When the ranch and lake access were purchased by my company, your HOA board failed to file an objection. That made the entire region open to new ownership claims, and I bought every parcel your HOA used to control, including the ones under this building and your family's lakefront cottages. Karen staggered back like I'd hit her with a brick. Lying. I walked to the wall behind the front desk, pulled down the old plaque labeled HOA board office, and handed it to her. You might want to keep this. Could be worth something to a museum someday. You're finished, she snapped. I'll get a lawyer. I'll sue you for everything. Ramirez chuckled behind her. You mean the same lawyer you had sent? That fake cease and desist to Mr. Ross last month? We got that cleared with the county court clerk? That document was forged. Karen turned to him, her voice now shaking. I didn't forge anything. That's not what the ink analysis said, Ramirez replied. And the signature on file wasn't even close. Karen's face turned ghost white. I suggest you leave, ma'am, Chief Darrow said with finality. Before we have to detain you. She stormed out without another word. I sighed, then turned to Ramirez. Did you bring what I asked for? Nodded and handed me a sealed envelope. Every complaint, every fake ticket, every citation she ever filed against you, all dismissed. And the DA's office is reviewing 24 additional HOA complaints tied to her. Good. Time to clean house. Over the next week, I worked with county officials and the sheriff's office to audit the HOA's finances and operations. What we found was worse than expected. Thousands in misappropriated funds. Fraudulent charges for repairs that never happened. And even bribes paid to approve building permits on land the HOA didn't own. Karen's name was on nearly every document. When the IRS agents showed up, she finally cracked. She tried to flee the state. We found her trying to cross into Canada using her sister's passport. It didn't go well. Back at the ranch, I replaced the HOA signs with my own. The new office was redesigned to serve every resident. No more HOA fees, no more gatekeeping. I opened up free boat rentals, restored public dock access, and installed cameras to prevent further tampering. Residents who had once feared Karen came by in waves, shaking my hand. To volunteer. You did it, Old Man Harris said one morning, tipping his hat. You finally shut her down. I nodded. Only took 3 years and a mountain of legal paperwork, but the fight wasn't over yet, because Karen had a cousin, and he was the county's most aggressive real estate broker. Rumor had it, he was now trying to buy up every empty lot on the lake with plans to turn them into a private resort. 2 weeks after Karen's dramatic exit from the lake office, handcuffed, humiliated, and indicted, you'd think things would have settled. But no. Her cousin, Bradley Reeds, a smug, Armani-wearing real estate broker from the city, rolled into town like he was auditioning for a villain role in a bad soap opera. He didn't waste any time. On a foggy Tuesday morning, a string of black SUVs pulled up near the west side of the lake. I was on my ATV checking the dock repairs when I saw a crew unloading signs. Future home of Lakeside Executive Estates. Private access only. I hit the brakes and rode straight over. Hey, got a permit for this? I called out. A man in a tailored blue suit turned and grinned. I don't need one. The lots were purchased legally. Maybe you should check your own land map. I already did, I said flatly. And those parcels are part of the federal shoreline conservation strip. They can't be developed. Not without environmental approval. Smirked, sliding out a leather folder like he was doing me a favor. Bradley Reed's Karen's cousin. But don't hold that against me. Not here for drama. Just business. Clean, profitable development. You can even keep your little cabin. I'm not interested, I said, flipping through the documents. They looked like photocopies. Nothing official, no real signatures. You will be, he said coolly. Once you realize you're the only dock owner left on this side of the lake. And when these estates go up, your shoreline's going to be in high demand. Think of the return. I don't need the money, I replied. And I'm not selling, he chuckled, handing me a business card printed on black silk. Everyone says that at first. That evening, I pulled every document I had from the county office, every shoreline easement, every environmental restriction, and every title deed that showed where my ownership ended and protected land began. Bradley had no legal claim. The next day, he filed for construction permits anyway. What followed was a dirty war. Bradley began using his city contacts to pull strings. Inspectors suddenly started showing up at my cabin unannounced. Someone filed noise complaints every time I ran my generator or chainsaw. Code violations appeared out of nowhere. Cracked steps.
Outer tank hazards.
Even a claim that my dock posed a danger to migrating birds. I wasn't surprised when my power was mysteriously cut one morning. I installed cameras, backup solar, and filed a harassment claim with the sheriff's department. But it didn't stop. That's when I got a call from FBI Special Agent Nadine Carter. "Mr. Ross," she said over the line.
We need to meet.
"You've been targeted by someone with ties to interstate land racketeering, apparently, Karen." And Bradley weren't just family. They were partners in a shell company operation out of Denver. They'd been buying up distressed HOA properties, forging fake board minutes, and reselling the land under fraudulent zoning claims. Lake Ranch was their biggest target yet? Your case triggered a red flag because your cabin is adjacent to federally protected water, Carter said. That makes it a federal matter. And now we've got a paper trail. 2 days later, Bradley held a launch party for his supposed estate development, invited local press, brought a drone crew, and even put up champagne tents. I invited the FBI. When Agent Carter and 2 federal marshals arrived, Bradley's champagne flutes froze mid-pour. She walked straight up to him. "Badge out." Bradley reads, "You are under investigation for wire fraud, tax evasion, land conspiracy, and violation of federal shoreline conservation laws." He laughed. "You can't prove anything." She held up a stack of warrants. "Actually, we can. We traced 6 LLCs tied to your name, all funded with illegal HOA dues and grant money meant for shoreline preservation. You're done." Bradley tried to run. Didn't get 10 steps before a marshal tackled him right into his own champagne table. The press loved it. Karen's cousin was hauled off in handcuffs, shouting something about family legacy and real estate empires. Meanwhile, I stood by the dock, hands in my pockets, watching the last of their scam unravel in the summer wind. I didn't just win back my cabin and dock. I got justice for every homeowner they'd stolen from. And before I went home that night, I walked back to the office, carved a new plaque, and screwed it above the door. Lake Ranch Community Office, independent and free. No HOA, no GATEKEEPING, just peace. Until the next fool tries me. The fog hadn't even lifted from the lake when the convoy of black SUVs rolled up. Bradley Reeds, dressed in a blazer too slick for this part of the world, stepped out like he owned the place. The man had an aura of smugness, a sharp jawline, mirrored sunglasses that reflected back your own disgust. I was checking on dock repairs when I spotted the movement through my binoculars. I'd seen construction crews before. This wasn't. This was an invasion. I climbed onto my ATV and gunned it down the slope. They were already planting fake development signs before I skidded to a halt. Future home of Lakeside Executive Estates. I read aloud. "You've got to be kidding me." Bradley turned slowly and gave a thin smile. "Not kidding at all. You must be Mr. Ross, and you must be trespassing." He laughed. "I own this land now, or rather my company does.
Thanks.
To some timely HOA auctions and a few desperate sellers. I know every lot on this shoreline," I growled. "And every one that's in the conservation zone. You don't own this." Bradley didn't flinch. He snapped his fingers and an assistant handed him a full leather folder. Inside were doctored deeds, faked surveys, and zoning requests stamped with what looked like rubber-stamped approval from a defunct HOA board. "We revived the HOA," he said, as if that explained everything. "We voted on new developments. You'll be seeing new neighbors soon." I narrowed my eyes. "Karen's behind this." He smirked. "She was, but she's out now. I've taken over." I took the folder, noted every fake signature, and tossed it back to him. "I hope you've got good lawyers." "Oh," he said, straightening his cuffs. "I brought the lawyers." and they've already filed harassment charges against you. Sundown, the sheriff's office had received over a dozen complaints against me. Trespassing, interference with development, illegal dock extension, even accusations of hoarding water rights. The HOA was trying to turn the government against me again, but this time I wasn't alone. After Karen's arrest, federal agents had started digging into the HOA's financials. And now that Bradley was stirring the pot, he triggered a full-on federal review. Special Agent Nadine Carter called me that night. Double quotes, "Mr. Ross," she said, "this is bigger than we thought." She explained that Bradley had been running a regional scam. Across 5 states, he had created shell HOAs using forged minutes and hired fake board members to vote through land seizures. Once properties were abandoned, they were auctioned off to Bradley's LLCs and resold to buyers unaware of the fraud. "This lake ranch is the crown jewel," she said, "and we need your help." The next day, I allowed the FBI to install undercover cameras near the development signs. Within 24 hours, they caught Bradley's crew dumping toxic gravel into protected wetlands, a federal offense.
I'll bet.
Was forwarded to the U.S. Attorney's Office immediately. But Bradley didn't slow down. He launched a media campaign branding me as a violent squatter. Local channels aired edited footage of me shouting at workers, conveniently cutting out the part where I told them they were trespassing on federal land. He even staged a community town hall where he brought in fake residents, wearing shirts printed with Lake Progress Matters. I showed up anyway. "I built this dock with my own hands," I said to the cameras. "That office, that was my family's long before the HOA formed. They built their house of lies on stolen paper, but this land knows the truth." Then I dropped the bomb. A deed from 1928, signed by the original ranchers, notarized by the state, and reinforced by recent court decisions. The land, the shoreline, and the dock, all mine, including the water access rights Bradley's developments depended on. Bradley looked stunned and furious. A few nights later, my cabin was firebombed. Thankfully, I'd been out on the lake checking water lines. I returned to find my security system had captured everything. Masked men in hoodies, driving one of Bradley's company trucks. That was all the FBI needed. Search warrants were issued for Bradley's offices in Denver. They found everything. Money laundering, forged permits, bribed county officials, and bank transfers to Karen's offshore account. The press descended like vultures. I watched from the dock as FBI agents escorted Bradley in cuffs toward a federal vehicle. Cameras rolled. Reporters shouted. One even asked me if I felt vindicated. I just nodded. All I wanted was peace on my lake. The real cherry on top came in court. Karen was dragged into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit. No longer the HOA queenpin, but just another defendant. Her cousin refused to testify for her. He tried to take a deal and shift the blame her way, but I had the final say. On the witness stand, I laid it out for the jury. The fake meetings, the harassment, the destruction of protected land, and the corruption that nearly poisoned our whole lake. I didn't shout.
I didn't gloat.
I let the facts burn hotter than any rant ever could. They were both found guilty. Karen got 12 years, Bradley got 15. Afterward, the judge issued a permanent dissolution of the HOA and assigned control of the ranch's common property to the lake. Shore Stewardship Trust, a non-profit I quietly funded to protect the land forever. I returned to my cabin with a fresh coat of paint, new solar panels, and a brass plaque above the door that read, "Office of the Lake Ranch Steward. By people. For peace." I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat by the dock, watched the sun rise over water that no one could ever steal again. Let them come. I built this place to last.